Have a care!
Regular viewers to the History Squad will know that we have our own particular format when it comes to making our films. But when an opportunity lands in your lap, we'd be a fool not to take advantage. Now, this spring, we were at Bosworth Battlefield and we came across the House of Bayard demonstrating medieval gunpowder weapons, from the first handguns to full siege artillery. So we filmed them, with permission of course, because it was brilliant. I'll chip in for context, but the real stars are Bob Pryor and the House of Bayard. So let's join in. Now Bob, the presenter, was already in full flow when we started filming, so I'll fill in what he was building up to. He's explaining that gunpowder is one of the great accidental discoveries of the ancient world. Chinese alchemists around 9th century AD were experimenting and noticed that a mixture of saltpeter, also called potassium nitrate, sulfur and charcoal had a dramatic tendency to ignite. By the 10th and 11th centuries, the Chinese were already using gunpowder in warfare, fire lances, early rockets and explosive bombs. But knowledge of its composition was closely guarded, and it wasn't until the 14th century that European armies were beginning to experiment with what we now call artillery. And that brings us to what we're about to see. The first thing Bob demonstrates is the fundamental principle of gunpowder and why containment is everything. Loose powder just flares, but pack it into a confined space and you get something very different indeed. Now, over to Bob with some loose powder in the pan.
Then what we'll do is we'll set it off. Now, as we said, what you need to do with powder is compress it. So what this will do is give you a big volume of gas. Have a care. Whoa. Yeah. But no bang. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the same amount of powder into what we call a pole gun. Now a pole gun is one of the earliest guns that they produced. It's not pole as in a gun on the end of a pole. Pole is the word for head. So you heard of the poll tax from the head of the household. This is the pole gun or the pole axe. It's an object on the end of a stick. So now this particular one here, Colin's got exactly the same amount of powder, but it's compressed inside a pole gun. Give you warning.
Have a care!
So exactly the same amount of powder, but compressed into a large space. Now pole guns were very easily made. They were very simple. All they were a billet of iron with a drifted hole in the end of them. They were drawn out. The spike on the end isn't for fighting with, that's for hooking over a shield. So these Pavise shields you see with the livery on, they'd hook them over the top or a castle wall or the railings on the ship, and they'd fire them from there. So that was your pole gun. Very, very easy.
Moving on to 1399, you have the Tannenberg gun. Architects found one just like this buried under a collapsed tower at Castle Tannenberg. The tower had fallen in 1399. The gun was found still loaded. There was wax in the touch hole and powder and ball inside. It was ready to fire. Incredibly, it had been hidden for 5 centuries. It's cast in bell bronze in the same foundries that made church bells and shows the expensive, high-status end of early firearms. They weren't cheap weapons. They were reliable and, crucially, they were reusable.
Have a cat!
The idea of the Tannenberg gun was it was in an armoury. Anybody could get it out, pick the wax out the touch hole, prime it, fire it. It was a gun that was in use. So the next development, what they realised was obviously these things were really useful, but they were expensive to produce. So they started producing guns like this. So this is an iron gun, all made by blacksmiths. So this is a hammered piece of billet of iron that's been drawn out into a long stock. Now this one, this reproduction, was actually shown with a mounted knight in full armour on horseback, and there was a fork sticking up between the horse's ears, and the man was holding this over the top to fire it off at the top of the horse's head, which I don't think would really work. It could have been a concept, but it was actually something that was drawn up as actually a picture that was in there. So I'm going to load this one down. What I'll do is I'll talk you through the loading. First of all, you need to put your powder in, your measured amount. So you put your thumb over the touch hole, and in goes the powder. Then what you do is you put in your wadding. Normally you'd put wadding in, and then you would put normally a ball in, or shot, depending on what you were doing. You'd put this one in, and you put a couple of wads in it. I'm using tea bags because they're biodegradable. Next thing you do with it is you prime it. So just like any cannon, the touch hole is on the top. And you prime it. But as you can see, the powder is on the top of the gun. And if the wind blows your powder off, and you've got to start again. Have a care! So that gun is an all-iron gun. What they realise is all-iron guns are good, but actually if you make the barrel longer, you can make them more accurate. So then we move on to the arquebus. So the arquebus, you're starting to see development. So you're putting all your pieces, so you've got a simple trigger. All it is a serpentine. The barrel is exactly the same as the cannon. It's got the touch hole on the top. See, so the touch hole is on the top. It's on a wooden stock, so you can actually aim it and look down the gun. You're not firing it from the hip. It gives you a lot more control.
You'll notice that the ramrod is housed underneath the barrel of the weapon. It's now part of the gun itself, much more convenient. And the wooden stock might seem a small thing, but it's genuinely revolutionary because you can brace it against your shoulder, look down the barrel, you can aim the weapon. This is the moment the firearm transitions from a noisy deterrent into a precision instrument, or at least it's the beginning of that journey.
Right. The handgunners are going to load again. And then what we're going to try is we're going to try to get them through a simultaneous volley. All together. So we're going to fire all the guns. But while they're just reloading, I'll talk about another development. Which is this one. This one is the hand cannon. And as you can see, it looks literally just like a cannon on the end of a long tiller. Now these were made out of iron. So these are long strips of iron that have got rings over the top holding it together. And it's an easier way of making barrels. You're not using billets of iron that are hammered out, you use strips. So these are what they call hoop and stave guns. Hoop and staves is what you call barrels you make your water barrels out of. That's why a gun barrel is called a gun barrel, because they're made like water barrels. Hoop and stave. There's lots of phrases that are used out there. Keeping your powder dry, flashing the pan, all of those ones comes from gunnery. And hoop and stave and gun barrel is the one. Giving fire, setting fire to the gunpowder. That is all from black powder technology. This one is a button lock. So you've got a button on the side. There's no trigger on this one. You want to turn it around that way? Yeah, you can see. So it's a button lock. It just pushes a button and it drops the powder into the mat. Are you gonna?
I will. Yeah.
Will do? Yeah. Step out of the way.
Have a care!
Again, One button push, gun goes off. It's not a trigger, it's a button. It's another idea. It's another type of technology they were trying out. Unfortunately, with a button lock, when you push the button, sometimes the match falls out. Unfortunately, things don't always work, and that's why these things don't stay. They realised that with the serpentine, or like on Josh's gun there, you can lower the match into the powder. It's a lot more controllable. Springs and buttons work well, but if the match flies off, how are you going to light your next shot? You're not, and by then you could be overrun. So Colin's going to reload that, and then once we've done the volley on the handguns, then we'll move on to the artillery. So in this period of history, imagine you see the castle sieges of the 100 Years' War. In the early part, it was all trebuchets, all wooden construction, throwing stones at castles. You throw a piece of stone that's the same kind of stone as the castle, the two things crush together like any rock and they both break. And that's how you break through the walls. And you want consistency. So what they realised was, instead of having a huge trebuchet that you've got to cut down half a forest for to make the beams, to make the ironwork to put on the trebuchet, they could use guns. So the early guns they were using were very specialised, and they were using guns what they call bombards. So we've got a mini bombard, which is called a bombardella, and it's the iron gun that's sitting over against the fence line over there. Once we've fired these ones, we'll show you what the bombardella looks like. The idea with the bombardella is to throw a 6.5-inch stone ball about 500 metres in an arc, and it hits the wall. You reload it, you fire again, it hits the same spot every single time. It's consistency. You pound that particular piece of castle wall, the outside collapses, the rubble core falls out, and then you can break through the inside and get into the castle. Right, all the handguns are loaded. Simultaneous volley on Linda's Havoc.
Have a care.
Let's have a thank you for the handgunners. We're going to get Colin and Arthur at it now because they're going to load the bombardella. Bombardella is a stone thrower. So the bombardella has a powder chamber at the back. The idea is you've got to get all the powder right at the back of the chamber and get it packed in. It takes about the same amount of powder as Big Red, which is the large gun in the middle. So it's got a reasonable charge behind it. If you need consistency, you need consistency in powder. In this period of history, the Brew brothers produced horned powder. The idea, you get your wet powder cake, you push it through a sieve, and you get individual grains of powder. So one measure is one measure. In this period of history, you found that the men would go and fight in the wars, and they often left their wives in control of the castles. So they would have castellans and people like that, but a lot of the time, the castle guns were crewed by ladies, so they looked after the guns. So the furthest gun is a siege gun called Donkey, and the idea of the siege gun is it's got an elevator on the back, so it will shoot downwards. So you could put it on top of a castle wall, like maybe the height of that oak tree, and you can fire down on the people who are walking up to you with ladders trying to break in. The gun in the middle is Big Red. That's a Burgundian-style siege gun, so a French-designed gun, long, low chassis. It will fire a ball which is 2 inches in diameter, 50 millimetres. That ball will go 700 yards to the first bounce, and then it will bounce again 2 or 3 times. It'll go nearly over 1,000 yards, that gun will fire. And it got the ball said to bounce at knee height. You're firing stone shot in this period. It's not iron cannonballs, it's stone shot. The gun on the end is Oleon. That's a French breech loading gun. So the back of the gun is actually removable and you load it separately. And that's what I'm going to go and do now. We can try for simultaneous?
Yeah.
What could possibly simultaneous, yeah?
Today.
Right, okay. So, we're going to go for a simultaneous volley. On my have a care. Have a care! Okay, let's talk you through the loading process. So first of all, what they do is they mop the gun. So they go down with a wet mop. The idea of the wet mop is that in the back of the breech chamber of the gun, obviously, haven't got to worry about that with volley on, but with the muzzle loading guns, you've got to go down with the wet mop first. The wet mop then goes down and it clears it. Next one is the dry mop, because you don't want wet pieces down the back of your gun in your gunpowder, so you need to dry mop it. Then what you do is you load the powder. To get the powder right at the back of the chamber, you use a spoon. So it's a long spoon which you pour your powder into, and you put that down to the back of the chamber and tip it in.
You'll notice that all of the gunpowder boxes have a conical roof. Yeah, that's so you can't put candles on them. Can you imagine that? You're keeping gunpowder in it. Somebody comes along, puts a lit candle, and kaboom, you won't be a gunner for very long. Also, if it rains, the water will actually run off the roof of your little box. Don't forget, it's important you keep your powder dry.
So on Big Red Down, they're pouring in the powder, they're pouring it into the spoon, and then the spoon then will go into the gun. He'll turn the gun, turn it upside down, drop the powder right at the back of the chamber, and that means then the powder's down there. Next thing, they put the wads down.
There'll be a lot of wadding on this one.
So down goes the wadding. So the first wad. So they'd put a wad down against the powder. If this were firing in warfare, they'd put what they call a sabot down, which is a circular round disc, a shoe, a ball for the boot. It's where the word sabotage comes from. It's because it's a sort of a derivation of the word for clog, because they used to throw clogs into machinery to smash it up. So they called it a sabotage. So it's sabot. So the sabot is the ball for the boot. That'll go down. Then you put the ball down the front, and we're normally wrapped in wadding to keep it in place, so it's not going to roll out. There we go, they're loading that one up there now. You can see they're ramming it, so they're ramming the gun really hard. When they put the powder down, they'd have left a pin in the back, so they pull the pin out, so you know that there's powder at the back of the gun. Then they can pour the powder down the touch hole right at the back, and they're all ready to go. Okay?
Have a care.
Have a care.
So you can see with Donkey, when that fired, that actually jumped around, that actually moved. And that's because it hasn't got wheels on it. The idea of Donkey is you can take it apart completely, you can carry it up a spiral staircase to the top of a tower and set it up there. Also, if you are being besieged, you can take the gun apart and run away with the barrel, because the barrel is the most important part of the gun. Right, we load in one more? What, one more? Yeah, we'll load.
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I'd like to give a huge thank you to the House of Bayard for allowing us to film their demonstration here at Bosworth Field. And as always, please like, share and subscribe. And next time we'll be back to our normal format. So until then, bye for now.